The Yamaha Tenere was born in 1984 with the legendary XT600 Tenere. Tenere being the name of a region in the Sahara Desert, the kind of terrain this bike was designed for. The XT600 was itself an evolution of the XT550 and the even earlier XT500, which goes back all the way to 1975, one of the first dual sports ever built. Over the years, the Tenere line went up to 660cc, 750, and then 1200, before the current 689cc Tenere 700 came out in 2019. I bought a T7 as soon as it hit Canadian shores in 2020 and have been happily adventuring on it ever since. Check out my playlist on this bike in the top right corner. And this bike has become a celebrated bestseller since then, and understandably so. In fact, it's so popular that 5 different models have been released in Europe, but not in North America, as American and Canadian customers always seem to be getting hosed by Yamaha when it comes to receiving new models. All we get is the original standard bike. And as much as I like my standard T7, if I could choose between the different models right now, I'd opt for the Extreme model with the upgraded KYB suspension, which is only slightly more expensive than the base model. But in all of this Tenere hoopla, one bike seems to have been forgotten. The Super Tenere 1200, a bike that has been around since 2010, is hardly ever talked about these days. This motorcycle is bar none the best deal in big adventure bikes. The Canadian version comes standard with cruise control, traction control, rider modes, an adjustable windscreen, engine guards, electronically adjustable suspension, luggage rack, center stand, tubeless ready wheels, shaft drive, and aluminum bags, all for 19,400 Canadian dollars. That's about 14,237 US dollars at the current exchange rate. Yes, I did say with the aluminum bags. Check out my extensive review of this bike in the top right corner. For comparison, a T7 costs 13,600 Canadian and doesn't offer traction or cruise control, rider modes, shaft drive, adjustable windshield, tubeless wheels, and electronically adjustable suspension. And if you add the aluminum bags with the mounting hardware, the center stand, and the luggage rack, you'll end up looking at around 17,000 Canadian dollars. So the question is, which of these Teneres is the best deal? Because as a T7 owner, I can definitely see situations where I'd pick the Super Tenere ES over the Tenere 700. Where and when? You might be surprised. For all the details, stay tuned. And as always, if you're enjoying the content, please consider supporting the small channel by subscribing, liking the video, and sharing it with friends. First, the power. The Tenere 700 has 72 horsepower and 49 pound-feet of torque, while the Super Tenere ES churns out 110 horsepower and 86 pound-feet. It would be tempting to call the Super Tenere the clear winner here, but the truth is that this is the power measured at the crank, and there are several factors which close the gap in performance considerably. 1. The T7 is lower geared, which helps acceleration. 2. The T7 is 132 pounds lighter than the Super T, 452 pounds to 584 pounds for the Super Tenere. That's without the bags. And 3. The T7's chain drive is more efficient at transferring power to the rear wheel than the Super T's shaft. So, despite the Super Tenere having the clear advantage in horsepower and torque, in most situations the T7 feels close on the pavement. Where the extra horsepower makes the biggest difference is when cruising the highway at high speeds. The Super Tenere engine feels a lot more relaxed at 80 miles per hour or 130 kilometers per hour. The big bike does not feel like it's straining at all on a long haul, while the T7, which is capable of easily hitting high speeds as well, just feels more busy and strained on the highway. I love my bike, but on the highway or while rolling on the power, the Super T wins hands down. As I already mentioned, the weight of these bikes really sets them apart from each other, and here is where the T7 gets one back on the Super T. That 132 pound weight difference can be felt when maneuvering at low speeds and especially when off-road. More about that later. With a 34.4 inch seat height, the Tenere 700 is a tall and fairly top-heavy bike, but the Super Tenere feels heavier despite the fact that the seat can be adjusted to 33.3 inches in its lower position. This seat is wider, so they actually feel about the same. The Super Tenere is massive and tall and can be a handful for a smaller rider. Part of that extra weight is due to the Super Tenere ES now coming with electronically adjustable suspension, which can be toggled between rider, rider and luggage, rider and passenger, and rider with passenger and luggage. I have to say, while I do sometimes harp on about motorcycles being too techy, the convenience of electronically adjustable suspension is awesome. Press a couple of buttons and you're set. No special tools or counting clicks. On pavement, the Super T suspension, 7.5 inches of travel front and back, is superior to the T7s and makes for a firm and sporty ride when dialed in to a harder setting. You can surprise yourself with how fast you can corner on this bike, but the Super T holds the line so well, it feels so steady on the side of its tires that you can hammer the turns to the point where you're scraping the pegs on the pavement. The big Tenere's weight is a little slower to transition from side to side than the 700s, but for a 600 plus pound bike with the bags, this 1200 feels positively nimble above anything but walking speed. Once moving, the weight disappears. Despite its bulk, the bike is very well balanced, and the 19 and 17 inch wheels and road bias tires contributed to its excellent handling on the tarmac. In fact, the extra weight probably helps with the traction in corners. The Tenere 700 feels less confidence-inspiring on a twisty road than its big brother, and several factors contribute to that. Its taller suspension, 8.3 inches front and 7.9 inches rear, isn't quite as firm or shouldn't be set quite as firm if you're going off-road on it. Second, the larger 21 and 18 inch wheels are a bit more vague feeling when on the side of the tires. Thirdly, the stock 70-30 tires, 70% road, 30% off-road, are a bit less suited to extreme lean angles than the rubber on the Super Tenere. That is not to say that the T7 can't absolutely rip in the twisties. In fact, its lighter weight makes for faster direction changes. I've pushed this bike before, though with my new 50-50 tires, I'm still hesitant to explore the limits of traction. It's just that the Super T is so stable and predictable in a corner, it manages to outshine its little brother. Actually, it manages to outshine a lot of bikes that may be considered more sporty. I'd say that I'm faster on a twisty road on the Super T than on a sporty tourer like the FJR 1300, and who would have imagined that? It's probably down to the wide bar and the more familiar, to me, adventure bike riding position. Predictably, off-road the roles switch completely. The T7's extra suspension travel, 2 extra inches of ground clearance, and bigger wheels make it far superior on the trail. The biggest difference, however, is the weight. On the Super T, you don't ride off-road, it rides off-road and you hold on. You get the feeling of huge mass hurtling forward, mass that will neither stop nor change direction quickly. The road-oriented tires do a decent job on the gravel or hard-packed dirt, but once the sand or mud get deeper, you should grow concerned. This is not a bike you will be riding confidently down a challenging trail, and it is not a bike you should ride alone on challenging terrain. The T7, on the other hand, shines off-road. It's no enduro bike to be sure, but for its size it handles challenging off-road terrain extremely well. You don't need to be Paul Torres to take this bike in the dirt and make your way through some intermediate single track. And with better tires and a drop in air pressure, it can almost keep up with 100-pound lighter dual sports. The T7's advantage over the Super Tenere off-road is significantly larger than the Super T's advantage on pavement. Unsurprisingly, in terms of comfort, the pendulum swings back to the Super Tenere. It's a couch with a plush ride, and the suspension allows you to pick how soft a ride you want with the push of a button. The weather protection on the big bike is far better, and the seats not even close. The plank on the T7 cannot compare to the wide and comfy Super T seat. Likewise for 2-up, the Super Tenere has a much roomier passenger seat with better passenger wind protection. It has cruise control standard, and although the bags are of similar quality and build as the ones on my T7, the bigger bike's right bag does not lose capacity to an exhaust cutout. Finally, the weight of the Super Tenere, while being a hindrance off-road, is a huge advantage at fast highway touring. When those crosswinds are blasting or you're passing a tractor trailer which is causing serious air turbulence, the Super Tenere barely notices while the T7 gets buffeted around. Plus the convenience of shaft drive and tubeless wheels. Yup, you can safely say that the Super Tenere ES is competitive with any sport tourer or bagger when it comes to munching pavement miles. And after all, let's be honest, that's where most adventure bikes spend most of their time. The final topic I wanted to cover was value. Yes, the Tenere 700 is a less expensive bike. In Canada, we get the Super T ES with the bags and center stand for 19,400 Canadian, while on the US website it comes without the bags for $16,300. At the time of this writing, $16,300 US converts to $22,210 Canadian. So in Canada, we get the bike for about $2,800 Canadian less, and we get bags, about a $3,000 value including tax. Wow. The T7 with bags, engine guards, and center stand would come to about $2,000 less expensive, but would be far less touring equipped. I dare say in Canada, the Super T is the better deal. In the States, it's debatable. One aspect of value is how up-to-date and modern the bike is, and this again is debatable between the two. The Super T has the cruise and traction control, rider modes, and the electronic suspension, so it definitely outdoes the T7 in the tech department. However, the Tenere 700 is the far more modern design with the fresher styling, nicer dash, and phone connectivity on the new one. The new bike also offers a quick shifter, although my 2021 model didn't when I bought it. Comparatively speaking, the T7 is closer to cutting edge in its category of middleweight ADV bikes than the Super T is among heavyweight adventure motorcycles. The Big Yamaha is quite frankly the most outdated big ADV on the market. It has the goodies that the other bikes offer, but is the heaviest and second least powerful. Only the Africa Twin Adventure Sports has less horsepower, and the Super T has the most old school dash and user interface in the big ADV category. It is testament to its design that it handles as well as it does and is so comfy, but other shaft drive competitors from Triumph and BMW have outpaced it. Of course, the Super Tenere has the advantage of the much better price, more standard equipment, and Japanese reliability, but it is far from a sales leader among big ADV bikes. The T7, on the other hand, is one of, if not the most popular middleweight ADV. In the end, which one you get will depend on how much off-roading you do. On pavement, the Super T wins everywhere, even sportiness, surprisingly. Off-road, it's no match for its slimmer and more athletic sibling. If I could only have one bike, I'd get the T7, no questions asked. I ride off-road a lot. However, I do have an enduro bike for serious off-roading, and my WR250F eats every adventure bike alive when the going gets rough. So, would I opt for a Super T with a dirt bike in my garage? Maybe, if I was going to tour a lot. Currently I don't, but if long hauling is the kind of riding you prefer, and you don't do much more than the occasional dirt or gravel road on your ADV, the Super Tenere ES is the better choice. It's too bad that it gets so little attention these days, as this is one of the best deals in the ADV space, especially in Canada. But what do you think? Which would you go for, the jack-of-all-trades T7 or the only Japanese shaft-driven ADV bike? Please share your thoughts in the comments below. Thanks for watching all the way to the end, ride safe, and may the spokes be with you.